Good morning. You are tuned into 1100 WSGI. This is Lee Marie with the Go Show special edition because it is the first Friday of the month, which means we have the Wild Doc. And that's when the sound effects come in. Right? And we're so happy to have Miss Pat Samler back as well.
Good morning.
Good morning, you guys. How you doing?
I'm well.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the first Friday of the month, and we're so excited because we have been learning so much from Wild Doc. I mean,
appreciate that.
And I hope that all of you guys are implementing this stuff, right? You know, you're not using fluoride. There's just so many things, right? You're eating more fruits and veggies and meat and less of the processed foods. I'm just throwing out little teasers right now because I want them, if they haven't been watching you religiously, I think that they should go back to the videos. You know, you just search Go Show Wild Doc, and episode after episode is just full. I guarantee you all will learn something.
And can we also say that he doesn't get paid for any of this?
That's right. He is here.
He is here because he cares about you.
That is an excellent point. Yes, this is not an infomercial. Although you will get more good information out of anything that you could possibly pay for. So, but, you know, I know a lot of people are starting to go to you down there, and, you know, Laverne was just on her way out, and, you know, she was saying, if you,
her husband,
I'd love to see a mobile, you know, a food truck, but with Wild Doc, right?
Right. Mobile chiropractic clinic.
Yes.
A shuttle every day.
Yes. Matter of fact, Crystal over at Health Kick Store wants you to come and do an in-store appearance because a lot of people are talking about you in Springfield.
Yeah. Well, nice.
So let's get that on the books. Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Quick prayer right here. Here we go. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all the blessings that you are just pouring down on us. Thank you for your wisdom and your discernment and for allowing people like these individuals to come on our show and to just speak life over our bodies, over our minds. Oh, Heavenly Father, take us today. Take this show where you want it to go. We praise you. We love you. In the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right. All right. So many places we could start, but I know that there's a cool research study that just came out.
We'll share that. And then when you were saying that with people eating more fruits, vegetables, you know, and healthy meats and stuff like that, actually, I wanted to mention something I've been implementing with a few patients that have been dealing with some nutrient deficiencies, maybe B vitamin deficiencies, magnesium, you know, copper, zinc, things like that, is that if you look back through research on what we consume, and you know, it's almost like in nature you'd rarely get the opportunity, you know, way back when, to consume foods in these, you know, have all the vegetables and the corn and the wheat and then, you know, all the seeds, nut seeds, and meat. You wouldn't have it all together. You would typically go out and you'd hunt, you'd kill something, you'd take that back, you would eat that alone. You would go and gather, and you would eat what you gathered, the fruit or the nut or the seed or the vegetable. You know, so you'd gather things. And really, when we talk about vegetables, most of our vegetables have been not necessarily genetically modified, but they're actually like hybridized, so they're grown specifically for different purposes and things like that. And sometimes they're grown for resistance of, you know, insect consumption, so they want to resist insects eating them, and that's why they were selected and bred over time. Problem with that is, though, if you look at certain studies, they've taken like the highest source of zinc as far as like a natural food, and that's oyster. Oyster has some of the highest amounts of zinc in it. Kind of beef liver would be next in line in that high mineral content. But if you take zinc, just measuring zinc absorption in eating an oyster, but you add a flour or corn tortilla to it, it can almost take down the zinc absorption to zero.
Wow. Interesting.
So it's like some people deal with, I mean, I don't know if you ladies have heard this, but, you know, last couple of years, and I mean, more than that, but magnesium. Everybody should be on magnesium. And that's why, you know, I've always thought to myself, why is this like, why does the health realm go towards these isolated minerals by themselves? I'm like, that's never the way we were supposed to consume nutrients or minerals. And not that I say that can't help bring somebody back from a severe deficiency. What I'm saying is, how are we supposed to consume things and get our minerals naturally? And that's just one recent study that I've been kind of revisiting those, or that science behind nutrient uptake and nutrient absorption and mineral absorption is to start telling patients with certain situations that they need to, separate their meals, separate their foods, eat your vegetables by themselves. And really where it comes is like vegetables and especially grains really have some of the compounds like phytates, lectins, these things that actually are what are called anti-nutrient. And what anti-nutrients do is they bind to minerals and don't allow our body to absorb them. So, and that's really from plant material and from seeds. And what I tell people is if you can understand it, and I use this example, and I don't know if it's funny or not, but, we get on the trampoline with my kiddos, and we jump around, and, in the hot summer, you want to be a shirt off, get your vitamin D, but then it's like you're stuck with all these little seeds. When we had the little, netting around it, so the birds get on there and sit on there, and then they poop out the seeds, and then it, rains, and then the bird poop gets washed away, and then it's left, there's, tons and tons of seeds are on our trampoline.
Oh, wow.
Well...
I didn't know that that's where that was coming from.
But it's not like wind blowing it in, it's hard seeds. And, these seeds are passing through the digestive tract completely undigested. There are chemical compounds in seeds and in the hull that actually inhibit digestion. So if you really want to maximize absorption from a seed or nut or seed, what you need to do is sprout them. So that's one way to get around that. Another way to get around or reduce the amount of phytates and lectins in vegetables is to actually go ahead and ferment them. So it's like fermentation of vegetables reduces the impact. That? Fermentation? It's like beer.
Because I always think of sauerkraut.
Yeah, sauerkraut. And what's amazing is it's easy to ferment things like sauerkraut or cabbage and different things like that. And it's really just take salt and water and you mix it together, or just salt, and it draws out the water from those vegetables, and you just grate them up. You douse them with sea salt and you stir them up, and it's the natural bacteria that's in the environment will actually bacteria and yeast will start to ferment them on their own. It's pretty dang easy.
Wow.
Yeah,
with
so you cabbage can do it especially.
Just that easy. Just salt and water.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. And just let it sit and have you don't want flies in it and stuff, so you have either a terry cloth over the top of a cheesecloth, or you put one of those I forget what they're called, the little spouts with water in them so the air can't go in, but as they create CO2 and off gassing.
So you don't put them in the fridge?
No.
Okay.
No, keep it out. So it'll ferment faster, ferment a lot slower. If you're getting sauerkraut from natural food stores and things like that, if it was fermented and put into a jar and then sealed, a lot of times they've pasteurized it or heated it so that they kill off the bacteria so it doesn't continue to ferment. You don't have this can that explodes because of pressure. So the live sauerkrauts have little spouts on them to where air can come out and escape. So that's one where if you want live, that's where you go. Again, the fermentation that's taken place already has those beneficial effects. So it's if you really want to be a really nutrient dense and nutrient absorbability, increase that capability of our body absorbing, is ferment your vegetables and eat more fruits and healthy animal products. I haven't read it yet, but another individual that I follow online, I guess I consider maybe a colleague, in the health coaching realm, he was talking about the quality. They've now did a study, and he had posted it, that they did a study on the quality of our food is really more important than just, fruits, vegetables, things like that. Quality of it makes a difference. And that goes back to quality of our soil, different things like that, the quality of how we raise the animal, that type of thing. That it's not just, fruits and vegetables are good and meats are bad. Well, wait, we can actually be healthy on healthy meats. So,
and it's interesting that you brought up a combination of food, because that is actually something that I've been wanting to bring up, because I remember about 30 years ago, I read a book called Fit for Life. And it was all about don't be combining things because it's bad for your digestion.
You had a good memory.
Yeah.
Well, no, and I remember that because so many people.
Because you didn't combine your foods.
Yes, exactly.
Help your brain.
and it is, and I did find that to be true. That when you more and then recently I was reading some stuff about dog feeding. And it said the best thing to do is kind of do what in nature does. Sometimes, they get meat, sometimes they get veggies, sometimes they get nothing. And to kind of, sporadically do little things like that. And so I've been doing that with my boys.
Yeah, dogs don't go out and be like, okay, I want a little bit of lettuce, I want a little bit of carrots with my...
Yeah, we don't get the golden corral.
I eat some grains, they're just like, meat, dead animal. Okay, let's eat that. And that's all they eat.
Yeah. So it makes sense, because I know that I did learn this year that, carbonated drinks should not be eaten with any food because they block nutrient absorption.
It causes bloating and things like that.
So I learned that, but it makes sense.
And it can neutralize the acid in the GI tract sometimes.
So it makes sense. I'm going to revisit that whole combination thing, because it makes sense. Yeah, in nature, we wouldn't just all of a sudden be walking along and there's, a buffet.
Yeah.
Like a carbonation of liquids.
Yeah.
Or Tums that, and Tums are well known to cause serious.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I have some friends that just will not get off Tums, and I tell them it's not a good thing. They said, but they make me feel better. I said, yeah, but they're doing opposite, right?
Yeah.
Of what they should be.
Tell them, does a piece of duct tape over their check engine light make them feel better?
There you go.
Because the body's screaming something is wrong. Something is wrong. And one of the lifestyle modifications that I suggest everyone do if they have heartburn is stop consuming simple sugars. All right. Just stop all sugary drinks, anything isolated sugar. Stop putting sugar in your coffee or anything else. You're allowed honey, you're maybe maple syrup, in moderation, but the reality is just stop all of the sugars, and it's extremely common that heartburn will significantly improve.
Nice.
Now,
what about the what's it called? It's supposed to be good for you. The sugar that's supposed to be
stevia or
stevia is a plant leaf.
Stevia.
Yeah,
What
sweetened
about that?
leaf. It's okay. It's definitely a beneficial alternative. I've kind of steered away from it even. Not steered away from it because it's harmful. I have my own bees and honey, and we use maple syrup and honey. So that's our go-to
Love
sweetener.
honey.
So that's just my personal preference is that direction. And nowadays it's just so much like the stevia leaf is not white. They bleach things that, for the aesthetics of it. So I'm like, it's being altered in some ways by man. If you grew your own stevia plant and crushed the leaves up or dried them and crushed them up and put them in, that'd be great, I think. But, sadly now we're getting a lot of adulterated, and then a lot of times people will be like, oh, I found stevia, and they show me, and it's like the first ingredient is maltodextrin, so it's a sugar, a simple sugar. So it's like, shouldn't be consumed.
Sugar
Yeah.
and stevia? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's some great information that people can start doing today to improve your health. And this doesn't cost a thing. Just start implementing this.
And I will say, heartburn, I've seen several patients that have had heartburn, and we work on the upper cervical spine that affects the parasympathetics that control our digestion, our acid production, and the muscle that at the upper GI or above the stomach, right before the esophagus, it's going to close, and that muscle weakness because of poor parasympathetic supply of the nervous system can cause that. And I actually had I had a chiropractic testimony when I got into chiropractic school that my IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, substantially improved when I got to chiropractic school. And that was because I had a degree of scoliosis in my lower back, work on my lower back. Hey, improve my digestive tract's function because my brain can communicate to it without stress and pressure there. Now, at the end of chiropractic school, how do we learn so that when we get out, we can be good at adjusting, and be able to do that? Well, we learn on each other. And I was a person that I love to be adjusted because I love the click and pop. That was just something I really like. I got addicted to crack. I'll tell you what.
Is it the click and the popping?
The kind that, not the bad kind. So, but when I was in chiropractic school, everybody liked to adjust me because my spine would pop easily. And now realizing that's not always the best thing for everybody. And so I went through a transition of improvement in the structure, mobility, and biomechanics of my spine. And then eventually I went into a stage of hypermobility, specifically my upper cervical spine. And I started getting sinus issues. I started getting heartburn, actually. And I was in a time in my life where I was doing like competition triathlons, I was doing Ironman triathlons, and I got to a point where I was running and I would get out about a mile and a half and get hit with heartburn when I was running. And I'd literally, it would be so bad I'd have to walk home. And running 20 miles, a day, doing things, training for these Ironman triathlons. And I'm like, what is going on? And I was frustrated because I'm like, I thought chiropractic was supposed to help me. So I reached out to a mentor of mine, a friend, Dr. Tony Nalda in Orlando, who did very specific scoliosis, corrective care. He was very, very specific, probably one of the most specific chiropractors that I was ever mentored by. And I asked him about it. He said, well, let's look at that parasympathetic region of your spine. Let's look at what's going on. He took some x-rays. He did some lateral flexion x-rays to look at mobility, and it actually had loosened the atlas and occiput. So the skull and atlas was unstable. He says, you need to stop getting adjusted by your other students, and you need to do this specific adjustment. So he adjusted me on one side with an instrument and then gave me an exercise to strengthen the muscles to hold it in place. And I did that one adjustment, did the exercise that night, got up the next day and ran 8 miles with 0 heartburn. And it made a huge difference. And again, that's the atlas vertebra, the top bone of the spine, affects your vagus nerve. And that's your parasympathetic for your upper GI down to 2/3 of descending colon, which can affect a huge degree of your health. So if you can get specific in that area, it can help some people. Again, other times it's like your body is screaming, you are feeding me junk. Stop feeding me junk. I'm going to burn your esophagus until you stop eating junk. So sometimes the body's like, you're disrupting that by what you're putting in, and other times it's dysfunction of the system that controls the acid production in the muscles. In my case, that's what it was, because I was eating a healthy diet. So there's always multiple potential factors that play in. So
That's interesting. So that helps with, you said, sinuses as well.
Yeah. Yep. So I cleared up my sinuses and stuff. Yeah. So give it time. Sometimes, I mean, and like with your, it's mobility. You're so stiff, so rigid, so inflamed, and we've got to take care of that, and you'll get there.
And that's just, such a new thing for some people to realize how our spine and our nervous system affects our inner organ, because so many people just want to go to regular medicine to either cut it out or burn it off or something. And, sometimes a simple adjustment. And I was driving here today and I was thinking about like a hose. If you have a kink in your hose or you go and you bend your hose,
garden hose, step on it.
Stuff doesn't come out.
Water. Yep.
So if your back is all,
That's the
had
old
kink.
Simple way of explaining chiropractic, which most people can understand and have that understanding, is, the brain's trying to communicate down the spinal cord and out the nerves. So if the spine is out of alignment, it can put tension or pressure, stress on those nerves. Now, that pressure idea, theory, and that, the old way before we now understand more neurology, is the way of explaining. It's a simple way to understand, chiropractic's connection to the visceral or the organ function. But in reality, there's a lot of actual feedback, neurological. It's not a suppression of information. It actually sometimes is an increase in tone of the nerves. So you take like fibromyalgia. So I've had patients with fibromyalgia substantially improve under chiropractic care, and we'll talk a little bit, and it'll be mentioned in this study about long-haul COVID and hyperbarics. But fibromyalgia is known to be a condition of central sensitization. So the central nervous system is sensitized. So when the spine biomechanics are off, all right, that creates a negative neural feedback. Negative feedback to the brain and nervous system, putting it into more of a stress response, facilitating a sensitized state. All right. Your sensory system kind of goes up. Sensation goes up when you're in a fight or flight and stress response, because kind of survival mode. We need to survive, so we need senses heightened, and so that's an effect. So if you take the spine, you subluxate it, you misalign it, you have improper biomechanics or movement of the spine, and that facilitates or sensitizes that area of the nerves and facilitates a higher firing rate, or too sensitivity. It fires too easily. It doesn't have the ability to inhibit the pain signaling. So when you start to adjust and improve biomechanics, you take away that facilitated state of the nervous system in that region of the body or that component of that person's nervous system, and fibromyalgia improves.
That's awesome, because I know a lot of people that have that, and they just say, "Oh, I've tried everything. I just can't no one can figure this out."
Well, that's because it's the same thing. Like let me read this actually, because they say something that I think has application to both fibromyalgia and post-COVID syndrome. So this is talking about, so this is post-COVID. So I'll read this study. Let me make sure I don't lose the page. Okay, I'm on page 1. The title of the study was a journal in Nature. It was recently published. The date on this, if I could find the date real quick if you guys wanted it, but obviously 2022 exact. Is within a month or two they published this. Anyways, hyperbaric oxygen therapy improves neurocognitive functions and symptoms of post-COVID condition, randomized controlled trial. So let me read this. Suggested mechanisms, and what they're talking here is about the suggested mechanisms by which the pathogenesis, the disease process. You remember months ago, when I was talking about the pathogenesis, microvascular damage due to the spike protein and what it could do? Well, now that's the research is saying, yeah, that's the way in which these conditions are coming about. Neurological problems, pain, chronic fatigue-like symptoms. We'll go through some of those, anxiety, depression, but the suggested mechanism include direct brain invasion of the virus. That's a theory there, as well as dysregulated immunological responses. So a dysregulated immune response, so we need to work on allowing the body to get back to a normal regulation. Thrombotic disease, that would be your microvascular clotting. Mitochondrial dysfunction, which is known now, very well known now, which is like your energy powerhouses for all your cells to do what they need to do. Vascular injury, again, with secondary tissue hypoxia or low oxygenation is hypoxia. Currently studied treatment options of post-COVID condition are targeted anti-inflammatory molecules. So why I want to read this is because many people with fibromyalgia, they're given anti-inflammatory drugs by the common medical physicians that are not trained in the understanding of what it's not strongly an inflammatory condition, and even biopsies of tissue and joints where individuals with fibromyalgia have the pain, they oftentimes find little to no, and not no, but very little inflammation. So it's not the inflammation, tissue destruction. There's like, wait, we took tissue out and it looks normal.
Yeah.
Because it's a neurological, it's more of a brain and nervous system condition rather than being a localized tissue damage issue. You feel pain here, the damage isn't being done there. Your brain feels pain here because it's sensitized. So, anti-inflammatories for both fibromyalgia and post-COVID condition oftentimes don't do anything at all. Hardly help those people. Specific diets even. And I would be curious about what the trials, so they had 8 to 10. I haven't read any studies on specific diets. I'd love to read that. Now, what I've seen in the dietary habits that my clients adhere to, and people who have had post-COVID, again, I kind of go back. Eat healthy animal products, healthy animal fat, beef liver as your multivitamin, go into more fruits, and then, vegetables. And again, there's the good, better, best of vegetables is into the fermentation, and I've seen great results with changing diet. Now, a lot of times those people who are dealing with post-COVID syndrome and issues, one gentleman could not go back to work, chronically fatigued, would get winded just walking out to get the mail from his mailbox. And we did add an anti-inflammatory. Maybe that wasn't the one that helped. Maybe it was the ginkgo. But we used ginkgo, we used mullein for his lungs, and what else did we use? We used astragalus, which is a tonifying herb, a balancing herb for the immune system. So we kind of, again, going back to the dysregulated immune response of like the suggested mechanisms by which COVID causes problems, dysregulated immune responses. So we work with herbs to help regulate the immune response. We work with herbs that have an anticoagulative effect, not like a blood thinning effect. You're not going to thin your blood too much, unless you're like guzzling ginkgo or, we used yarrow was the other one because that is a blood balancer. So yarrow is a great herb for people who have coagulation problems that can't clot. It's actually something that if you have in your yard, if you cut yourself really bad, you can actually use yarrow to help stop the bleeding faster. And it has some antiseptic properties, so it actually can clean the wound as well if you make a strong tea out of it. But we used those, and I think those were the main ones. And I think we threw turmeric in there because early on there was like, okay, usually there's some level of inflammation. I think, and again, when your body's mounting immune response, there's some level of inflammation. But post long haul COVID, you may be out of the thick of the infection. You're after the infection. But now you're dealing with the ramifications of what that infection did to your body because your body couldn't fight it off efficiently for various different reasons. And a lot of people, they're kind of lifestyle factors and other health issues and certain medications kind of set them up for more severe disease and damage being done while they had the infection.
I had,
So,
just real quick, because you're on that subject, one of the questions was, please discuss long COVID neurological issues, brain fog, anxiety, and what someone can do to get their life back.
hyperbaric oxygen therapy, like by far. And again,
Can you
I think the
explain that?
neuro-
Because some people
so-
have no idea what that is.
So, hyperbaric oxygen therapy is pressure and oxygen. You're supplemented with a oxygen mask through an oxygen concentrator. Oxygen concentrator gives you higher percentage concentration of oxygen. So, like you see people with chronic lung diseases, COPD, different things, they'll supplement the oxygen, carry an oxygen concentrator around with them, but higher pressure is really what the key is for the neuro regeneration. All right.
And so this is a procedure that you would go to your office.
My clinic provides this. I'm the only clinic in Clarksville, Tennessee now providing it, and pretty much the surrounding area unless you're going all the way down to Nashville. So, but what it does is under pressure, you diffuse. You can actually dissolve by compressing the air molecules like a soda pop bottle that's carbonated. There's air in there. It's just under pressure and it's pressurized. And when you and it lets off pressure, you see bubbles come out. You see air come out of it. All right. Air wasn't created. It was just under pressure. You couldn't see it in the liquid, in the fluid. So under pressure, you dissolve oxygen, you compress the air molecules, and thus more air molecules can be carried by the fluid. And by a pressure gradient plus a supplemental oxygen, you can dramatically increase 100 times more, 300% more times more oxygen is in the fluids. And what many people go, can I just use oxygen? Well, you have a carrying capacity of your red blood cells, so without pressure, you can only get to that carrying capacity, 100%. You can't go above, because that's what those devices are measured off of, like what under this normal pressure, atmospheric pressure plus 21% oxygen in the environment we breathe, the air we breathe, your red blood cells, like I tell people, I have two hands. So red blood cells, let's pretend they have two hands for oxygen. They grab 2 molecules of oxygen. If they're being 100% efficient, every red blood cell grabs 2 molecules of oxygen. They're at max capacity. They can't carry any more. All right? So that's your 100%. Through oxygen supplementation under pressure, you diffuse that oxygen into. You dissolve it into the fluid, the plasma, the tissues. You kind of push it in there with pressure. And what that does is it exponentially increases the oxygenation. And then what takes place is, I'll maybe read this, paradox is what I want to look up. So it's called these protocols include the one used in the current study utilized the so-called hyperoxic-hypoxic paradox, by which repeating fluctuation in both pressure and oxygen concentrations induce gene expression and metabolic pathways that are essential for regeneration without hazardous hypoxia. So there's effects. What I say is God was really intelligent. When you study the hyperoxic-hypoxic paradox, is that when we actually if we were to say we're going to suffocate or the oxygenation in this room starts to decline, our body says, oh no, we're getting into a state of hypoxia, meaning we're not going to have enough oxygen for all the cells and tissues in our body to survive this event. And we're going into that state, and oxygen percentages in our body are declining. The body says, I need to produce hormones and chemical messengers that are going to stimulate vascular endothelial growth factor, nerve regenerative growth factors. I'm going to stimulate growth factor, stem cell production. I'm going to stimulate these regenerative signals that are going to be floating in the body then. So hopefully if we make it through this event of hypoxic low oxygen, if we survive it, now we have all of these chemical messengers saying, okay, regenerate.
Wow.
So you have that effect by going high in oxygen, not during the time of going high in essence. What science is seeing is that it's when you go real high in your percentage of oxygen in the chamber and then you come out, or you just take the mask off inside the chamber. So some clinics are doing 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off. Because when you're directly using the mask, you're getting roughly 96% pure oxygen there with the oxygen concentrator. When you take the mask off, even though you're still under pressure, you're breathing now 21% oxygen. So if you're pressurizing 21% oxygen into the body, room air, versus now you're breathing in, and so your lung is filled with roughly 90+% oxygen, then you're diffusing more. So you cycle, that's that fluctuation of oxygen. So it's when it starts to fall, you're going back, when you come out of the chamber, you're going back to 100% oxygenation because you were at 300%, let's say.
Okay.
So when you fall back to this level, it's the falling oxygen that the body interprets as if it's going into hypoxia. But what doesn't happen with hyperoxic state, high oxygenation, going back to normal, is you don't have the loss of mitochondrial integrity and function, which is a key driving mechanism in long haul COVID, is mitochondrial loss and dysfunction. So, and again, a key factor in even the neurological symptoms and problems from long haul COVID is the microvascular damage. Well, we already know that hyperbaric oxygen is working wonders. And this is multiple clinical trials on this in stroke patients who have lost the vascular capability or the blood vessel capability to bring red blood cells to areas of tissue that aren't completely dead but are starving for oxygen. They've been so damaged, the blood vessels with that stroke, so damaged that they can barely get enough oxygen just to keep it alive. But it can't function because it doesn't have enough of the energy. It's like the fuel. The oxygen is the fuel to generate energy for the cells, and the mitochondria do that, and they're damaged. But then when you diffuse oxygen into the body, into the brain under pressure, that actually regenerates the blood vessels, reduces the inflammation, stimulates all of those through the hyperoxic-hypoxic paradox effect, stimulates these growth factors, and the body regenerates tissue within the brain even, the central nervous system.
Wow.
So there was, and that's the thing, they go through, again, so the similarities for fibromyalgia, that's what I was wanting to say, is like, they're saying that in like even like therapy, psychological therapy, things like that, they're not working for people with post-COVID anxiety and depression. They have a section describing the mechanisms by use of fibromyalgia in here. So diffuse muscle and joint pain without local inflammation or malformation is one of the common symptoms of COVID-19, resembling other central sensitization syndromes such as fibromyalgia. A growing number of clinical trials have demonstrated the efficacy of HBOT in improving pain and quality of life from fibromyalgia patients. Previous studies have shown that fibromyalgia is associated with a decreased brain perfusion, that's blood flow, in the insula, hippocampus, putamen, frontal lobes, cingulate, cortex, if you want to know all the areas of the brain that are affected by fibromyalgia, that have decreased blood flow and thus decreased oxygenation, decreased metabolic performance and health, and so we increase that. In post-COVID-19 condition, fatigue is a common symptom, and the symptom was reported in 77% of study patients. HBOT improved both physical limitations and energy domains. Post-COVID-19 fatigue has overlaps with chronic fatigue syndrome. Symptoms common with chronic fatigue and COVID-19 condition include fatigue, pain, neurocognitive psychiatric symptoms, reduced daily activity, post-exertional malaise. It's basically like you exert yourself and then you're like, I just feel sick now again. It's almost like they run a fever again, so that's the malaise. Previous studies have demonstrated efficacy of HBOT in chronic fatigue syndrome in reducing symptom severity and increasing quality of life. Pathogenesis of COVID-19 condition in the central nervous system includes direct neuronal injury, frontal lobes, chronic injury-mediated glial cell problems, ischemic events, that's low blood flow, mediated by thrombotic events, mitochondrial dysfunction, chronic inflammation. Growing evidence shows that HBOT protocols can induce neuroplasticity and brain function and improve brain function even months to years after the injury. These protocols, again, include the hyperoxic-hypoxic paradox. These pathways can modulate the immune system. So again, that's balancing out the dysfunctional immune response. Promote angiogenesis, that's the regeneration of blood vessels. Restore mitochondrial function, again, a key component in the the physical condition of long haul COVID and induced neurogenesis. That's the regeneration of nervous system tissue. So getting rid of the neuropathies, getting rid of the dysfunction in the brain, injured brain tissue. So neurogenesis in injured brain tissue. Some or all of the effects may explain the beneficial effects found in the current study. So it's just,
Wow.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
Because, is there have you had patients where there was this with long haul COVID that did the oxygen therapy, and then was there a certain amount of treatments that you see that where they really started turning a corner, or is that just
in this study? I believe it was 40. Wow. So
and how long are those treatments?
Hour-long sessions.
Are they always an hour everywhere?
Roughly, some clinics will do an hour and a half, some will do an hour.
Usually hours the minimum.
And it's, again, that fluctuation is key there. And again, I would love for this to get FDA approved, but honestly, I don't see it happening because much of our government systems go towards approving things that are pharmaceutical and profit-based, Right. And yes, I'm going to say that I have bias in this. I'm sharing this information because I provide this service to my community. This is how I make a living for me and my family, okay? But this is what people need right now. Right. And I would love to see clinics open up all over the place because there's a dire need for it. What's great is it's not a need for ongoing care for most of these people. This is 40, 60 sessions. They get back on their feet, their body regenerated. Now they healed from the acute past injury, damage from COVID itself. And then there's so many other side benefits.
I was going to say, I'm sure it heals a lot more than that.
Just having somebody come in alone, I don't do advertising, things like that. It's mainly word of mouth. So a lot of patients, I've had certain patients with long haul COVID through herbal therapy and chiropractic resolve their issues. I've had some people with inflammatory, it triggered massive joint pain, massive body ache pain, things like that. They also had a prior autoimmune condition, and they had already done some foundational work with me already, and COVID hit them hard. We use hyperbarics. Actually, they responded in about 10 sessions, and they were feeling fantastic. Again, they had a year prior of my care that I think laid a strong foundation. COVID still with an autoimmune kind of triggered that relapse of that situation. So I've had a girl here recently with a young girl and this is not COVID related, but severe depression, suicidality thoughts, self-harm. And it was around, I'm trying to think if it was around, they said around 2 weeks. So she'd been through about 10 sessions. They started to see significant changes in her mood, capability of recovering. She went through 40 sessions, and now they're saying the depression mindset will come in, but she won't be in her room locked in there for multiple days. She'll need a time away, and then it's almost she bounces back, and they're just raving about the differences. And again, you look, and I had it up on my screen yesterday, and I know how to find it again, but if you look at decreased perfusion or SPECT scans, and that's one of the ways they're doing studies on I don't think they did it in this study, but they're doing it with stroke patients, TBI patients, concussion, things like that. They're seeing decreased perfusion, Alzheimer's disease, dementia. And the studies, when they're looking at how HBOT helps, it reperfuses the brain with oxygenation of blood. Wow. So it helps more blood flow, helps those tissues regenerate. You know what I mean? If you cut your finger and you have a wound, an injury, okay, the damage from COVID, in essence, is the same as cutting your finger. It's different mechanisms, but you injured tissue, damaged tissue. Now, if I put a rubber band around my finger and cut off the blood flow or substantially reduced the blood flow to that cut, stop the bleeding. But if you never took a tourniquet off, you're not going to heal.
Right.
You need blood flow. You need oxygenation to those tissues for the tissues to regenerate. Yeah, right? And get rid of the cut. Just in the finger, too.
Wow, this is so interesting. All right, we're going to need to do a little station break here for one of our favorite sponsors here. So let's hear about the Health Kick Store.
The Health Kick Store is here to help you with your allergies and many other health concerns naturally. The Health Kick Store has been serving our community since 1993 and is our area's largest vitamin and herb provider. They are located located at 511 Memorial Boulevard, Springfield, Tennessee, right next door to UPS. And guess what, seniors? You get 15% off every first Tuesday of the month. For more information, call 615-384-7482 or visit thehealthkick.com.
All right. Health Kick Store right there next to UPS on Memorial Boulevard. Check them out. And you know what, seniors? This coming Tuesday is the first Tuesday of the month, which means you get 15% off your purchases. So get in there. A couple calendar items real quick here, because today is the first Friday of the month, which means First Friday Market downtown Springfield. There's going to be about 100 booths, vendor booths there. There's a car show. The Republican Party will have a booth right over there by the museum. Lots of great things. Live band, family friendly, dog friendly. Why you're not going out there tonight, I have no idea, because they are always super fun. And there's only 2 left this month and October. That's it. So get out there. And then also, of course, tonight is the Al-Anon meeting at Covenant Confirmers Church, Motorcycle Church, over at 310th Avenue in Springfield. Enter through the front doors. For more information, 615-347-6905. Tomorrow morning, first Saturday of the month, GOP meets at Purpose Life Church, 805 Memorial Boulevard in Springfield. Go to the back dining room. It's the Patriot Potluck. And they're going to be hearing from Joni Bryan. She is from the 917 Society, which, you know what September is? September 17th is Constitution Day, so we're having her out because September is Constitution Month. After that, we're all scurrying over down to the state TFA meeting. It's an annual event, super fun, super informative. So if you are not yet a member of the Tennessee Firearms Association, go to their website, check that out. There's a whole boatload of people going down to that. Silent auction, live auction, all that kind of stuff. That is tomorrow, and that is September 3rd. I also know that tomorrow night is the tractor pull right here at the Robertson County Fairgrounds. So Laverne talked about that. If you need more information, make sure you go to the WSGI Facebook page or the app and look at the old shows, because I know Laverne recently had them on talking about all the details on that. So go to that. It is Labor Day weekend, and there's so much to do right here in Robertson County. So make those family memories. Just one heads up to save the date. We'll hear more about this in the future. Is the Hope Center is doing their big gala on October 15th. This is a fundraiser for them. It's going to be right here at the center. So I know that they're going to be looking for auction items and volunteers. So put that on your calendar. Thank you, Miss Ellen. Welcome back to town, Ellen and Jerry. We missed you. All right, we are back with Wild Doc. I know we only have about 15 minutes left, and questions are pouring in. So, but we're so excited. I'm oh my gosh. I got to watch the show again, because, he just dumped a whole bunch of information there, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I hope some more, regular doctors.
I just stole it from the researchers. That's all I do.
But okay. I don't want to talk anymore, because there's too much.
I let them do all the sciencey stuff, and then I just read it and be like, now I understand it. Now I know, and then I communicate it to people.
Now, I've heard some rumblings about possibly systemic enzymes helping with long haul COVID. Have you heard anything like that?
I haven't. No, I'll have to look that up.
They said,
systemic enzymes.
Yeah, I said not digestive, but systemic.
All right, well, he'll look those up for next time. Good. You stumped the doctor. That's like a game show.
Well,
Can you
More
stump
than
the
one
wild
way to
doc?
skin a cat. That's their.
All right, so did we?
I mean, it's nice to have a couple. Like for me, when I see the Wild Doc, he's got me on supplements and tinctures. And I went through the oxygen therapy. So, done various things to try to, get
How many did you end up doing?
10.
10, yeah.
My husband will only allow me to so much at a time. I have to save up to get more.
It is. Because it is a daily. Like they did. I think they did 5 days a week, and they went up to 40 sessions. So, and it's hour long. So that's time out of your day. It is. It's a labor intensive, the
thing
therapy.
Is that
it's time intensive, and there's financial investment in it.
And if at all possible, I feel like, there's a lot of things we spend money on that we could not spend money on and put toward the treatments.
How many people do? How much do people spend on cable per month?
Yeah, cable. Cigarettes, alcohol. Like all the recreational
Starbucks,
things.
everything
else. Starbucks, $10.
Starbucks with all the sugar that's killing you. But you know what I mean. It's like there's so many things we could cut out that
But you look
we
at
could put toward this.
You look at, like, if I were to just Google the cost of chronic fatigue, the cost of anxiety and depression that goes to the expense on your, on
livelihood,
your health, on your livelihood, be able to work. I mean, people are losing their jobs because of long haul COVID, things like that. I mean, if it takes a few thousand to get your life back on track, and then you can earn
Regain
that,
everything.
not lose your job, you can regain it. You don't have to be traveling back and forth. I mean, again, the study, it's like people are spending this money in gas money going to specialists and not figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for the answer in a pill bottle. And they're not getting it. That's what the study said. Studies on drugs and things like that have not shown significant improvements in this condition.
And there's I can verify that I've went for years trying to find the source of what ailed me.
Chronic illness,
went to, and okay, this doctor referred me to that doctor and this specialist and that specialist. I went. It was like
people spend more in
infuriating.
gas money than they would
and
for the
time,
therapies in my
your
clinic.
time out of your day and your job and
And I
everything
understand if
else.
you got to drive to my clinic every day for a little while, there's going to be some gas expense right now. So go to Circle K. I heard they're giving like 30% off this weekend. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Everybody's lined up at our Circle K. It's $281 in Clarksville.
What?
Circle
All
K.
right, I'm gonna
and
go
I
for
saw
that.
on Facebook somebody
that,
posted it.
Clarksville?
It was like Circle K was discounting just because they know Labor Day is like people travel, people
And that's right by your
I don't know
office?
why but other than awesome, thank you, Circle K. What was the
Yeah.
It's
purpose
real
behind it?
close to your office.
That was right by my office. That's the
Okay.
one I go to. They're almost always the cheapest next to.
Oh, there you go.
There,
Make
but
an appointment
I
and get
don't
some
know,
gas.
just you know what I mean? But people spend. I mean, I've got one lady right now that I just had another consult with. We've been working with her for a year and a half, almost 2 years. Well, no, we worked with her almost 2 years now. But this lady had spinal stimulators implanted in her spine. Okay, she just got them taken out. Her fibromyalgia issues she's had, doing way better. Her insulin or her A1C is steadily coming down. She had pancreatitis, so inflammation of pancreas. So there's a lot of damage there, and we're using some herbs. And I think you said somebody had a question about, if they
Insulin
think they're
resistance.
insulin resistance, and the onset of diabetes post-COVID is a very common thing they're seeing. Because if you have microvascular or just immune dysregulation, you could have inflammation in your pancreas. But we're using things like gymnema and golden seal. Those are phenomenal herbs for insulin sensitivity. And gymnema actually helps stimulate regeneration. So an herb even does kind of what, not to the full extent that hyperbaric oxygen could do and rapidly do. Gymnema helps in the regeneration of the pancreatic
And
cells.
is that something you can take even if you're
So
on
there's herbs.
medicine and things like that?
Yeah.
Medication?
You just, if you're on a medication that lowers your blood sugar, what I tell people is medications kind of force it, herbs assist and improve. So I've seen people start taking the herbs, their blood sugar starts coming down. I'm like, you want to wean off the medications because herbs have side benefits typically, not side negative effects, or the side negative effects are extremely small and very much temporary, So you take a medication, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So you want to eventually get to a state of health where you no longer need the drug, but also a state of health where you no longer need the herb. That's the goal of my clinic, is not to put people on. I put people through cycles and procedures, treatment strategies, through lifestyle modification, herbal supplements, and it's never like just take this and it worked. Take it for the rest of your life. It's like, okay, now what else can we do? What systems of the body we need to support? If that's helping in the here and now to help regulate your sugar and bring your sugar down, what else can we do? And that's where we took this lady Katie off of so many herbs. She has to take Creon because of pancreatitis. I mean, her pancreas barely produces any enzymes. We got her through COVID just fine. Where doctors were like, "You're gonna die if you get COVID." Like, I mean, they were just almost projecting,
geez.
like you just.
That's a curse, man.
She went to the mountains of East Tennessee to stay in a cabin away from everybody, for months out of fear. And I was consulting her by phone. Take these herbs, and we're gonna put you on mullein because your lungs are so weak, and we're gonna put you on. We used honeysuckle, and I'm like, it's a strong antiviral, and we did all these things, and she's just turning a major corner in her health. And just what's sad is she's, she has to be like, okay, so I'm going to do this next with you, Dr. Dale. future is going to be, because of blood sugar regulation, inflammatory conditions, all these things we're looking at now using for cognitive improvement. We're looking at hyperbarics with her, but she's going to have to budget out because she's like, I have tens of thousands in medical bills because of what insurance wouldn't cover. And now I'm bankrupt, practically, or I'm in debt living with her children, you know, her daughter. And it's so sad that the healthcare system and a lot of it was for doctors and tests that never just said, oh, this is going on in your body. Nothing was done to say, what could we do good for you? You got to start going to doctors who are just plain and simple say, tell me your story. This is what I do. I tell people, I can literally sit down with somebody, say, tell me your story, what symptoms are going on. Okay, those systems of the body need support right now. So these are the choices I would make in herbs or other procedures because that's what God created. God gave me the knowledge, I believe. So I take that knowledge, I say, God, what is the herb this person needs right now? And let's put them on it and support the organ. Who cares what's going on? They're having problems with their lungs. They're having problems with their heart. They're having problems with their brain. What helps support the function of those organs? Oh, these herbs for that. Okay, support and do good, rather than say, well, let's wait until we run several $1,000s worth of tests and then come back and say, yeah, there's something going on with the brain, but we
just
can't
give
really
you
how many things in this world, just if we would just ask people around us who are sick and suffering and be like, what have they said about why you developed this problem? Why you have diabetes? Why you have cognitive problems? Why you have fibromyalgia?
Amen.
Yeah.
They don't do that. They do, this is a test. Oh, your blood sugar is high. That's where you are, not why you're there.
Or they'll give you the duct tape to put over the indicator, right?
Or here's your Tums because you have acid reflux. Why do I have acid reflux? Well, we don't know. You know,
That's too much
if you
work.
really go down the rabbit hole with like, and like just start searching for cause of this, cause of that, cause of this, with all these different diagnoses, it's almost like every one of them is idiopathic. Well, we see this going on, but it's really more of an idiopathic thing. Well, I've got a little kid right now, all right, this like 10-year-old boy with idiopathic juvenile arthritis. Wow. Idiopathic means all the doctors have seen him so far were sorry. I mean idiopathic, you know what I mean? Like it's the reason the medical community has that word attached to so many different diagnoses. Idiopathic. Because it just means you're not smart enough to know what is causing it.
Wow.
And the kid doesn't need any, and this is after approval from his rheumatologist.
Wow.
He is off immunosuppressive drugs.
Wow.
Doesn't need them. Mom brings him in here recently and says, hey, he's been having a little bit of ankle pain. This was like last week. But he's been this entire year. It was, so the parents, like, we're almost now into a year and a half with this kid being completely medication-free under the approval of his rheumatologist because his inflammation and joint pain is basically non-existent. We adjust him. Parents have changed his nutrition. He's not even on any herbs right now.
Yeah.
He was initially to be like, okay, we want to get him off the medications because we want to supply his body with what will support his inflammatory response, support his regulation of his immune response, because, again, it is more of an autoimmune-like disease, and both parents have autoimmune conditions. So it's like, what causes it? I'm not an idiot. You had a dysfunctional immune response in your mother when you were in the womb, hence why you have more likely of developing an autoimmune disease. So how do we help the immune system to regulate? I'm like, let's go with some Romania. Let's go with some reishi mushroom. Let's go with some adjustments. And the kid's doing great.
Awesome. We do have only like 2 minutes left, and I got one more sponsor to run here. So let's hear about Southside.
Located at 1000 Main Street in the heart of downtown historic Springfield lies the Southside Drug Company, which has delivered hometown-friendly service since 1919. They offer medication therapy management, compression stocking fittings, nebulizers, monthly care packs in which you can get your medications rolled into strips of perforated packs, and free delivery within city limits. And my favorite, a healthy cafe for breakfast and lunch on weekdays. Store hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. For more information, visit SouthsideDrugCo.com. Be sure to tell them Lee Marie sent you.
What does it mean?
All right. This has been so educational. And I can't believe we are out of time already. but we are. So stay tuned. Next month, we will have the Wild Doc back on. But in the meantime, watch all of his videos and then also tell him about your website and your phone number and all that.
TheWildDoc.com, and we just opened up TennesseeHBOT.com. So we have that website now where you can go get the phone number.
And that's
schedule
HBOT?
HBOT,
Okay.
HBOT. And then, but the phone number for the office is 931-591-2010. Yep.
Phone number one more time.
931-591-2010.
Okay.
And I was going to have him just say one last
In the
thing.
meantime,
okay, in the
while that
meantime.
individual is looking for like saving up for maybe HBOT, saving up for herbs, your nutrition, what you eat, all right? You got to eat today, all right? Steer towards more of a healthy ketogenic diet, and the way I would simplify that is healthy fats, more of fruit-based fats like avocados. Again, if there's a situation of mineral absorption, you might want to either sprout your grains, sprout your nuts and seeds like almonds, walnuts, pecans, things like that, soak them. But you look at healthy fat from healthy animals, healthy animal products, and more of a ketogenic diet that is not a bunch of isolated oils. Like you stay away from your avocado oil, your coconut oil, your olive oil. Sometimes
don't use
too much. People use excessive amounts of those oils because it's a healthy fat, but they get into a situation where those can even oxidize. It's just sad because, I even was like, avocado is good fat. Avocado oil must be a healthy fat. Oh, wait, avocado oil, actually, once you extract it from the avocado and isolate it, it oxidizes extremely fast and becomes a deadly oil, damaging oil to your body. I thought original thought was,
Maybe next episode
so now
we'll
I'm just
do
going
all
back
oils.
to,
We need to go there,
I'm like
yeah.
going back to okay, wait a minute. So really, we shouldn't alter it from the way God created it. Just simplify life and say, if you could literally pluck it, pull it, or peel it, or slaughter it from the natural realm God created for it to live in or grow in, you'll be good. Just do that and eat it that way.
Awesome.
Make sure you know what poison
that
ivy
was
looks like.
That was for anyone who's suffering with long haul COVID and you're saving
Possible
up for
insulin resistance, things like
insulin
that.
resistance,
Diet,
and-
foundational.
Right.
Awesome. So much good information. Thank you so much.
welcome.
I'm going to see all of you out tonight at the First Friday Market in the Springfield Downtown Square, right where that big historic courthouse is. If you're not from this area, just look for the big courthouse in the sky, Main Street and 5th, around there. So, Miss Pat, would you like to do a prayer for our listeners and our viewers?
Well, Father, we just thank you for this wonderful time, Lord, just to discover more of just secrets to health, Lord God. We know that you've given us all things pertaining to life and godliness, Lord. You have equipped us for every good work. So, Father, I thank you for people like the Wild Doc who care about his fellow man and have done so much research for us and just went to bat to help humanity in this time where there's really a lot of attack against humanity. So I thank you for that, Lord. And God, I just ask right now that you would bless every hearer, every listener, Lord, who's tuned in this morning, God, that you would bless them with divine health, Father. We thank you, Lord, that you are the ultimate answer to all things. And Father, I thank you that you will lead, guide, and direct each and every listener to the answer they need to live in a healthy lifestyle and to give you glory and honor in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That was amazing. And I do want to clarify something because I had a question when I said this is what I feed my boys. That meant my dogs, my boy dogs. I know what people think that's what I was feeding children. Like, she's starving her children.
He's talking about puppies. Okay.
Give them raw meat.
Yes. My boys do get raw meat. My dogs. So anyways, you have been listening to 1100 WSGI. This has been Lee Marie with The Go Show. Make sure to go on Facebook. You can put in comments and like it and share it so that more people can get this information
Yes,
because,
come on.
goodness, so many people need this information. And you can put up in the comments section ideas for our next shows. And make sure you watch all his other videos because probably something that you're putting in your comment, he's already covered in one of our shows. How long have we been doing this now?
About a year, 6 months.
Maybe longer than 6 months.
We'll have to look that up. But there are
I'm
a
trying to
lot.
remember if it would just start this year or were we back
We'll look
last
that
fall,
up.
winter?
So yeah, look up the Ghost Show with Wild Doc. There's so many amazing programs.
If I can't remember, maybe I need to get the H-Bot.
Have a great day. God bless. This has been 1100 WSGI.